We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Podcast with me, Darren Rees. It's time for yet another episode on another club, and this time we're heading off to the East End of London, to a club which formed over 144 years ago. A club who was famous for being a part of World War I more than any other club, and a club that has only ever played one season of top-flight football in England. And it's also the club where the England skipper Harry Kane scored his first ever senior goal as a professional player. This is, of course, the story and journey of Orient, aka Leyton Orient Football Club. Before we go ahead, I wanted to read a letter that a young listener sent me just the other day with the help of his mum. Miles, who is 6 years old, is an Oldham fan. And he said, "Dear Darren, I've been listening to your podcast for over a year now. I've listened to every single episode at least 3 times. Your podcast makes me feel good about myself and makes me realise I can go on to do lots in football if I work really hard and I never give up. This season, my team got a penalty in a cup game, and although I was very nervous about taking the penalty, I thought back to the episodes where you have spoken about other players taking penalties and how they were brave to stand up and do so. I put my hand up and asked to take the penalty. I scored the penalty and we went on to win the game. Thank you for all the amazing episodes. I listen to them every single night before bed. And I would love for you to come to my school to teach all my friends about your podcast and tell them the stories that you have told me on Football for Kids. Thanks very much from Miles and Miles' mum." Well, Miles, a massive, humongous shout out to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to send me a letter. And may I add, it was a handwritten letter. I really appreciate you taking the time to do so. And well done on taking that penalty. It takes a lot of guts to stand up there and take a penalty, so well done to you. Right then, let's get into it, shall we? Let's get into the story of Leyton Orient Football Club. Leyton Orient Football Club, like many of the teams which we have spoken about on the podcast, was formed on the back of a cricket club. Over 100 years ago, I've got to tell you, it was extremely common for cricketers to play football in the winter as they wouldn't be playing cricket. And this is exactly what happened when members of the Glen Cricket Club in East London became the founders of Orient Football Club. It's a bit of a funny name if you're not used to hearing it on a regular basis. But the name Orient came from something that was known as the Orient Stream Navigation Company. You might be wondering, what on earth is that then? Well, to keep it simple, they were a huge shipping company who helped people move things by sea, whether that was people or actual products. They also played a big part in keeping people connected by delivering letters and parcels across the ocean. So, anyway, that's where the name Orient comes from, and some of the players who played in the very first team worked for that very company. At some point, they became known as Clapton Orient, as this is where the club was based, Clapton in East London. And then, on July 28th, 1914, World War I started. And when the World War began, many young people were asked to help Britain in the war to ensure the safety and the future of the country, and, of course, the people who live within it. In December 1914, 41 players, staff and supporters from Clapton Orient Football Club put their names together to serve in the army. They joined the 17th Battalion of the Middlesex Regiment, famously called the Footballers' Battalion, where many footballers served side by side. Before departing for military service in World War I, a crowd of 20,000 fans attended their final match to bid them farewell. After the game, the team paraded in their new army uniforms, receiving an emotional send-off from the supporters. Tragically though, during battle in 1916, 3 Clapton Orient players, William Jonas, George Scott and Richard McFadden, lost their lives at battle. They are remembered as heroes who sacrificed their football careers and lived to serve their country. At the club, there is a memorial that honours those that fought in the World War from Clapton Orient Football Club and the brave men who gave their lives in the process. After World War I had finished, Clapton Orient, as it was known then, moved to a new stadium, a new area on the Brisbane Road in Leyton. However, this was a seriously tough time for Britain and the world in general, as yet another world war broke out in 1939 and London was badly damaged. Years went by and eventually World War II finished. Orient regrouped and renamed themselves after the location they were in, and that is when they become known as Leyton Orient, in the same stadium they are in today as the club that they are known as today. By 1956, Leyton Orient had built a solid team. The fan base had grown and they won their first ever trophy after winning the 3rd division in the South League. This was quite a historic period of time for the club, as it was a time when they had a player playing for them called Tommy Johnston, who was known for scoring goals for fun. Tommy Johnston was, and get this, still is, all these years later, Leyton Orient's all-time top goal scorer. He scored a whopping great 121 league goals for the club and netted the most in one season when he stuck 35 of them into the back of a net while in an Orient shirt. These days, if you're lucky enough to go and watch Leyton Orient play, you may well find yourself sitting in the Tommy Johnston stand. Of course, a stand dedicated to yet another hero of the football club. A few years later was yet another historic season in the history of Leyton Orient Football Club. It was the 1962 season, which was the only time they have ever played in a top flight of English football. They scored 36 goals, had 84 scored against them, and they picked up just 22 points. But it's worth mentioning, these were the days when a win got you 2 points rather than 3. This changed in 1981, when a win was changed from 2 points to 3 points, as we know it today. Orient ended up finishing bottom that season. The competition was just too fierce, and they were back down to the division below before they knew it. Leyton Orient are certainly a club who have had their ups and their downs, but they're a club who have attracted some real stars over the years, and they've created them too. One of the most well-known created players, if you like, was a player called Laurie Cunningham. Laurie kicked off his career at Orient and was so good that he went on to play for the likes of Real Madrid, Marseille and other big clubs around Europe. Those who stood in the stands at that time at Brisbane Road were fortunate enough to see him at his rawest. No matter who's been playing at the O's and where they've been in the league, they have almost always had tremendous support. And a season that the Orient fans won't forget in a hurry was a 1978 season, especially when it comes to the FA Cup. That year, they made it all the way to the semi-finals of the FA Cup, beating top teams back then like Blackburn and Middlesbrough and Chelsea and Norwich. It was Arsenal who would end up stopping them reaching the final though. No matter what, the Orient fans who are still about today will never forget that season. It's also worth mentioning amongst all of this that Leyton Orient had got another name change in 1966. Back then, they got changed to just Orient, but then became Leyton Orient once again in 1987. Now, I've got to tell you, Leyton Orient in 1995 was in a bit of a bad place, in a negative place, where there wasn't really any money and there was arguments amongst the players, and I think it's fair to say that things were not going so well. Then, a very smart and very shrewd businessman called Barry Hearn came to town. He just happened to be a lifelong Orient fan. He brought the club and would be in charge for around 19 years. In those 19 years, Barry Hearn made major improvements to the club, its stadium and its financial situation. That 19-year period is seen by the fans as a very important period indeed. It's hard to get across how important Leyton Orient is to the community in East London and to the lifelong Orient fans. Football is obviously everything to many of the people who attend there week in, week out. They live and breathe the club. Leyton Orient are a team who have had almighty highs and in the same way, almighty lows. But they're a team with a support base and a passion that no matter where they are in the league, Brisbane Road will always be roaring. The stands will always be booming and the O's will always be cheered on. We've covered loads of history on Leyton Orient in this episode already. They really are a club full of history, especially in the most difficult of times in world wars and all that other stuff. And as I record this today, Leyton Orient are campaigning as one of the top teams in League One, with a solid and sturdy army of supporters behind them. Who knows what the future may hold for the O's, and where they may go in the coming years. Before we finish, here's a few facts about Leyton Orient Football Club that you can impress your friends and family with. Did you know that Harry Kane's first ever senior goal was scored at Leyton Orient when he was on loan there? The England skipper has never forgotten it, and in the global pandemic, he put his hands in his pocket and he sponsored the front of their shirts with thank you messages to frontline workers who were in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, as well as a children's hospice, also a charity called Mind who help people who are suffering with bad mental health. Harry Kane really is a good man. Leyton Orient have the record for having one of the smallest players to ever play in professional football in England. Fred LeMay, who played for Orient back in the 1930s, is believed to be the shortest footballer in professional English history, standing at 5 foot tall. And lastly, Leyton Orient are one of the oldest London football clubs in history, and as things stand, one of the oldest in the English Football League. So, if you meet a Leyton Orient fan, or hear their latest score on the news or on the TV or on the radio, you know exactly who they are, what they're about, and some of the special moments they've had over the years. You're armed with stats and facts and stories which you can wow your football friends and family with. So remember, if you know someone who loves football just as much as you do, then please tell them about Football for Kids. And whether you're playing football soon, watching it on the telly, or pitchside, I hope you enjoy the game. See you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.